highlighting history of suburban Sydney with the St Peter's Cooks River History Group.
Our aim is to preserve and promote local history.
We are based at St Peter's in Sydney's inner west.
Parramatta, located in Sydney's west, is Australia's second oldest European settlement.
The area was the ancestral home of the Parramatta clan.
In April 1788, Governor Phillip travelled by boat in search of land suitable for growing food. Finding good soil and water resources, he established a settlement called Rose Hill.
James Roos, an ex-convict, after successfully growing the first wheat in the colony at Rose Hill, was the first person in New South Wales to receive a land grant. Roos later sold his farm to Surgeon John Harris, who built Experiment Farm Cottage.
Governor Phillip built a lath and plaster cottage. It was replaced by Governor Hunter with a two-storied brick building. Government House was extended and a portico added by Governor Macquarie.
St John's Cemetery, the oldest surviving European cemetery in Australia, was established in 1790 as a general burial ground for all religious denominations. In the mid-19th century, it was consecrated and became an Anglican one.
In 1791, Phillip renamed the settlement Parramatta, thought to be derived from the indigenous word for place where the eels lie down.
Elizabeth Farm, Australia's oldest homestead, was built in 1793. It was the home of John MacArthur and his wife Elizabeth.
Hamblin Cottage was part of MacArthur's Elizabeth Farm estate.
In the early 1790s, the first road to Parramatta was constructed.
A log and thatched jail was destroyed by fire in 1799. In 1804, a new-storey stone prison was completed on the site now occupied by the Riverside Theatres. In 1842, prisoners were transferred to a third jail at its present location.
St John's Church was built in 1803. Twin steeples were completed in 1819. The foundation stone of a new St John's was laid in 1852. A parsonage was built in 1816.
Samuel Marsden built a watermill near the site of the present Cumberland Hospital Weir.
Elder House was built around 1819. For 10 years, from 1862, it was used as the municipal chambers for the Parramatta Borough Council.
The Woolpack Inn, originally the Freemason Arms, was named in 1821. It moved to a new location, the Elder House site, to make way for a second courthouse.
Governor Macquarie built a female orphan school, modelled on his wife's childhood home in Scotland, Aird's House. Today part of the University of Western Sydney.
The first horse race held in Parramatta was in 1810.
Macquarie established a native institution at Parramatta in 1814.
In the same year, the first annual meeting of the tribes took place in the town square next to St John's Church.
A colonial hospital was established in 1818, later becoming the Parramatta District Hospital. Today the site of the Justice Precinct.
New military barracks were completed in 1820. They became home to the Lancers in 1891.
Linden House in the Lancer Barracks was originally located on Macquarie Street. In the 1960s it was removed stone by stone and is now a museum.
The First Methodist Church, the Walter Lawrie Chapel, opened in 1821. A second building, Macquarie Hall, was built in 1839. Today's Lee Memorial Uniting Church opened as a Wesleyan church in 1885.
Australia's first purpose-built female factory was completed. It became a lunatic asylum in 1847, today part of the Cumberland Hospital.
A house built in 1821 for ex-convict John Hodges became the residence of Dr. Walter Brown, who named it Brislington. Today it is a medical and nursing museum.
The Agricultural Society of New South Wales held its first show, the Parramatta Fair, in 1823.
Darling Mill was established as a steam flour mill in 1825. It began manufacturing tweed cloth and was purchased by Murray Brothers in 1887. They operated as the Parramatta Woolen Mills. In 1911, the business was taken over by the Sydney Woolen Mills, which closed in 1975. now the site of Bunnings' North Parramatta store.
Work began on Hull's wind and water mill in 1828.
The Cumberland Mill, a 4-storey brick building, operated as a flour mill from 1841 and was later converted to a woolen mill.
The King's School opened at Harrisford House in 1832. A second school building was used from 1836 until the 1960s. Today part of Bayanami Public Primary School.
St Patrick's Catholic Church's foundation stone was laid on St Patrick's Day in 1836. A larger church building was commenced in 1854. A tower and spire were added in the 1880s. When a new church was built in the 1930s, the main body of the old church was demolished, leaving the tower and spire intact.
St Patrick's Cemetery on the corner of Church Street and Pennant Hills Road is the earliest formalised Catholic cemetery in Australia. It was in use from 1824 until 1972.
In 1837, the foundation stone was laid for a new courthouse at the corner of Church and George Streets. It replaced a 1791 building.
Lennox Bridge was completed in 1839.
In the same year, foundation stones were laid for the Centenary Wesleyan Church at the corner of Church and Grove Streets.
The construction of St Andrew's Presbyterian Church began in 1840. In the 1920s, the church was moved to Wentworthville. In 1925, a new Presbyterian church was completed.
James and William Burns built a steam flour mill. 5 years later, they built a 5-storey cloth mill manufacturing a high-quality cloth which became known as Parramatta tweed.
A Roman Catholic orphan school was established in 1844. The site became the Parramatta Industrial School for Girls in 1886. It became known as the Parramatta Girls' Home.
In his will, the Reverend Samuel Marsden left land and £200 for the erection of a church. All Saints was consecrated by Bishop Broughton in 1848.
All Saints Anglican Cemetery is the resting place for about 2,000 people. There are approximately 1,500 unmarked graves, which are mainly inmates of the Parramatta Lunatic Asylum and other benevolent institutions.
In 1855, the first railway went to Parramatta Junction near Granville. In 1860, the line was extended to Parramatta.
Land around Government House was proclaimed a public park in 1857.
Parramatta was incorporated as a municipality in 1861. The council took over land which had been used as a market site near the corner of Church and Macquarie Streets. Council chambers opened in 1881. A town hall in 1883.
In the late 1870s, a 2-storey post office opened, today occupied by the University of New England.
The foundation stone of St Peter's Uniting Church, originally a congregational church, was laid in 1871 by Mr John Fairfax, founder of the Sydney Morning Herald.
Parramatta Gas Company purchased land on the river. Gas works were established in 1873.
George Coates and Son built St George's Terrace in 1881.
The Anderson Fountain, erected in 1882, was moved from its original location near the Town Hall to Prince Alfred Square in 1888 to make way for the Centennial Fountain commemorating Parramatta's centenary.
From October 1883, a steam tramway connected the town to Red Bank Wharf. It travelled along George Street to the Park Gates. The tramway closed in 1943.
Major stores such as Irby's and Rawlinson's were established. The Murray brothers combined their businesses in 1884 and later built new multi-storey premises which dominated Church Street.
Grace Brothers' 1933 store was redeveloped as Westfield in 1975. In 1961, David Jones' first suburban store opened.
Willow Grove was built about 1886 as a private villa, also the location of a maternity hospital known as Estella. It was demolished for the construction of a new powerhouse museum.
In 1888, the Centennial Bars opened on the north bank of the river just west of Lennox Bridge. In 1986, the Baths building was demolished for the Riverside Theatres. A third Parramatta courthouse, located at the corner of George and Marsden Streets, opened in 1896.
In the 1920s, a stretch of water further up the Parramatta River, known as Little Coogee, became a dedicated site for public bathing.
In 1913, Parramatta High School opened east of the park's Maze Hill Gatehouse.
The foundation stone of the Royal Gate was laid at St John's Church in 1918.
In 1930, the Roxy Theatre opened.
The Parramatta District Leagues Club played their first season in 1947 when they entered the Sydney Rugby League competition. Parramatta Leagues Club opened in 1959.
The tower of the 1890s courthouse stands next to a new court which opened in 1974.
Lachlan Macquarie Chambers was founded in 1986 in the former 1930s Rural Bank building in George Street.
In 1993, the Rivercat service to Parramatta was inaugurated.
A justice precinct opened in 2008 on the site which had provided health services since 1790.
In 2019, Bankwest Stadium, later renamed Western Sydney Stadium or Combank Stadium, was officially opened.
Today, Parramatta is a modern commercial centre where past and present coexist.
If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to our channel. It's free. Coming soon, Discovering Historic Parramatta. And check out our website, stpeterscooksriverhistory.wordpress.com.